So I'm just taping this up because I don't want to get this gutter full of filler, because it's going to be really hard to get out afterwards. Righto, so before I start trying to mix some filler, I just want to try and highlight something. So I'm using the natural light coming through the door there, and I'm just coming from the angle that Louise has got the camera, and you can see through here where we've been in here welding rust repairs and all, you can see the wobbles along it. What I'm looking for is this line, and this line looks very good. You know, there's a big dent here that I've repaired, and you can see a couple of little marks in there. But this line to me looks very nice. So I'm going to try and have no filler on that line, but then I need to fill up these repairs and rust on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably start this end and I'll put some filler in, and then I'll start working that, and I'll head my way along. So I'm probably going to mix, I don't know, 50 grams or something, because I don't want too much because it's going to take me a while to get it in. And I like to use the scales with my filler. If people have watched what I've done in the past, they know that. For those that haven't, what I've got is a set of scales that come off of a paint system. So you just need some scales that are very accurate. So these are in grams. And what I'll do is I'll take my filler, put on roughly 50. So, you know, I'll put 50 on. And then I've got sheets. Now, all of this information's on our website, so astilldesign.com, and you'll go into the PPG info, and it's got all of the different data sheets for the paints that I use, but it also has these bulk mixture rates. So I've got 1.5 and 2%. Now, I've been using 1.5 at the moment, which is a bit slower to go off because I'm working in small areas and I want a bit of extra time. So 1.5 to 2% is the ratio by weight, and that comes off of the data sheet for the product I'm using. So I'm using the start line filler from PPG, and the data sheet tells me what my ratios are. Now, the value of using the weights and the ratios, that when you put the filler in, every time you mix a new batch, they've all got the same amount of hardener. So it's going to dry at the same amount of time, and when you go to sand it, you don't have a sort of hard bit and a soft bit. Sometimes if you mix it yourself, you'll get one bit that's really red and one that's not so red. When you go to sand it, it's going to sand differently. So the idea is to get it all to go off at the one rate, make your sanding more consistent, and it also helps if you have any problems later on. If you put too much hardener in and you go outside the specification of the product, you void your warranty. So there's a whole lot of reasons to do it. So I'm going to mix a bit up, put it in, and then we'll start sanding. Righto, so we've got 57, so I'll come down on my sheet. So I want about 0.8, so I zero that. Now we mix that up, and the idea is to try and mix it without aerating it too much. We don't want air bubbles. And we'll go and put it in. So it's not overly warm today, so this will give me a little bit of time to get it in. Now there's a really good video when we did the Camaro last year, if you want to sort of see a little bit more in depth. Terry from PPG and myself did a full episode on applying filler and the processes required to do that as per data sheet. Okay. This is not going to be an easy one. Now I want to try and keep this nice ridge in this top edge as well. So I don't want to go filling that up and losing our factory shape. I often find when people are using spray fillers especially, all of these lines get lost because when you spray your product on, it fills all those up. Now, if you're wondering about the gloves I'm wearing, they're just from Woolies, just for food preparation gloves, because I'm going to chuck them away after each application, and they're very cost effective. Although they have gone up a lot, they used to be very cheap. So once again, we're trying to minimise our pinholes, any bubbles or anything in that. So see here, just the dragging process. As it starts to go off, you can get rid of most of that. Now if I get a heap on this tape, I'm just going to take the tape off and then reapply it between coats if I've got to go again, which I probably will. Right, I've probably done too much now, starting to pull it a bit. When I do the next one, I'm going to tape this top edge. I should have taped that up so that I don't have all that filler going up on there. Because like I said, I don't want filler on that top edge. Right, it's time to leave that alone, otherwise I'm going to make a mess of it. Well, a little bit of rain, alright, we might have to shut the door, check that out. I've just pulled my tape off the bottom. I didn't want any, you know, once it's on there it goes hard, it's a bit hard to get it all off. And just along this top edge, I've just run along there with a rag with a bit of Prep-Sol, and that's taken off the bulk of that. And now I've grabbed my heat gun and I'm just going to put, this is all quite cold with the weather today, so I'm just going to excite that hardener, because most of these products around 20 degrees is where they go off. That creates the chemical reaction. So I'll just give that a little bit of heat, doesn't want much. Just enough to take that chill off. So that'll take about 8 to 10 minutes before I can start sanding that. So what I'll do is I'll just sand this little bit as soon as I can. I'll apply the next lot, then I'll come back here and start sanding this one. That's ready to go now. I've just put some dry coat. So it's just a powder form trace to go on there, and that'll give me an idea what I'm doing. This one here is still a bit tacky, so I've got to stay away from that. So this is Galaxy 120, and you can see straight away those ripples starting to show up in the guide coat. So what I want to try and do here is I'm going to rough it in. I don't want to cut through my epoxy because I've got to put filler down through here. So I'm just going to get this close, then I'll start working my way around so I don't cut through and have to be patching up the epoxy. But that was a pretty light skim, and it looks like it's going to pretty much take out all of them problems. And like I said, I'll get this here back where I can start to see that primer. And you can tell here I've masked this one up So I've got that nice clean line along that top edge. Now if I didn't use that trace coat, I wouldn't know whether I'd got to these bits, because when it's all white you can't see anything really. If I put a bit more on, I can see it's just starting to probably see a little bit of the epoxy bit coming through now, which is good. So I'll tidy that up, keep working my way along, and then I'm going to come back and do this corner here. So I've sanded that top edge up, so because it's got that little lip that steps out and around and down, same as on all of the sedan and the coupe, I've just ran a bit of tape through at this level all the way along. You can see where it was there, and I probably should have used a bit of 2-inch. And I've now just run some filler along that edge, because that had some pinholes and, you know, grind marks and stuff in it as well. So I've just put that in there in one go, and what I'm going to do now is give that a sand up, create some edges, and then I should be getting back to some epoxy like this. So there'll only be, you know, where there was some lows, otherwise it'll be back to the steel. Right, I've been making a bit of progress, so I just had to have a look to see where the video was up to, because I'm always sort of working ahead. So I've pretty much got this all right through here, and what I've been able to do is use the edge of this drip gutter, and I've sat my little block on there with my sandpaper on it to get my ridge so that it's flat and in line with the sill, with the gutter. And I'm cutting that down to pretty much where the steel was, but obviously there's a bit of filler because we've replaced all of this. And you can see there's a little bit, it's a little bit deep still. I've got to take a bit more out of here, but I'm just trying to get it all close, and then I'll go back over it with some 240. So this is all 120, 180. And then I've started to come down the back, because we've got this area here where there was lead previously. So as you can see, there's not much filler left there now. And I've got a little bit more to go in here. Then I started going up the top, and I've got a dent here that I'd repaired, and another one here, I think. And now I've started doing the top, and I'm just going to show you how I'm doing that. And there's lots of ways to do things. You'll see people using splines to put filler in. It's not something I've progressed to. I still put it in with a plastic card. So I did this piece first, then I came along and put this one in. While this one's drying, I come back here and sanded this one. Get my taper on this edge, and then I've applied this lot of filler. Went back and sanded this one, and then sanded this one after that before I went and had some lunch. So now that I'm back from lunch, the preparation for this here is just with the burgundy Scotch Brite, which I'm sure I mentioned earlier. So I've just given that a quick prep sole just to make sure it's nice and clean, and I'm doing that, and I've blown it with air because I've got areas here that had rust and pinholes. So I want to make sure that's really clean, and then when I put my filler in, I want to make sure I've got all the filler pushed in to all of those problem areas. And once I've got all of that in, so this is 120 at the moment, once I've got these two strips in, I'll then trace coat it again. So I've done 4 episodes on this with I think BOSSXC, and also with the Camaro we did last year, but we'll do a bit more this time, and I'll get Louise, seeing she's here with the camera, we'll put the filler in, I'll show you how I trace it and take it out, and yeah, if you've got work to do, you'll be able to use that method if you like it. Okay, so I've mixed about 160 there. That's about as much as I can manage to get in at 1.5 ratio. Oh, I need to go a bit lower than that. because there's no good mixing too much and then struggling to get it in. So the aim here is to get this pushed in nice to start with. And as you do it, you'll sort of notice that it has quite a lot of pinholes and stuff in it. Now this is start line filler from PPG, and I find with most of the brands, when you're putting it in, it will sort of have all those pinholes and stuff in it, and you need to sort of keep working it, and as it starts to go off, they'll all go away. Now I like these cards because I can bend that in my hand and run it along the shape of the panel. So I'm getting to the end. I'll need a little bit left over just to help me to finish the edges. Now if you find that you're doing filler work and it keeps going off on you when you're trying to put it in like this, you've got too much hardener in it. You're better off having a little bit less and then using the heat gun to send it off than you are to put a whole heap of hardener in it and then run out of time. So see how that's dragging there and leaving the holes? Well, that in a minute, when it starts to set, I'll be able to get rid of those. Right, I'll just keep playing with that for a little bit longer as it starts to go off. Making sure I've got it all in and the bubbles out of it. And this edge here, because I tapered it when I sanded it, I'm trying not to get too big of a step. Right, it's starting to go now, so all those holes are disappearing. I'm going to create myself a little edge down along here. Just pushing a bit of weight on this edge of the applicator. It makes it easier for me to sand later. So I can feel it starting to drag now, so it's starting to go off. It'll work a bit quicker. Right, a bit of a tidy up. A little bit across the top. And then you need to say to yourself, enough's enough, or you make it worse. Okay, it's just starting to drag. It's starting to set, so it's starting to drag now, so I'll leave that. Righto, so that's gone a bit tacky, and that's been, 8 to 10 minutes, because what I've done is I've put another sheet of filler on here so that while that one's drying, I'm putting this in. Now I'll go and rub this. By the time I get this ready, that'll be ready to rub. I can put some more in here. So I'm just working my way around. Now, if it doesn't go off quick enough, it's warming up a bit today. You can put a little bit of heat on it. And then I'm using a dry guide coat. It's a little bit messy, this one. I'll have some new stuff to try next week. PPG had just brought out a new aerosol dry coat in the SEM range, and I'm going to try that next week, so that'll be good because I like this stuff, but it just is, I guess it's charcoal or something. It's a little bit messy. Now I'm doing this by hand because old habits die hard, I guess. So I'm using the long board with some 80 grit. And there's a little bit of movement in the roof, a little bit soft, so you got to not press too hard. So I'm just going to use the 80 grit to take pretty much the top edge off it. Then I'll retrace it and do it with some 120. So I'm trying to cross cut over my curve, and I'm just watching my guide coat to see what's high and what's low. You can see a high here and a bit low through here. It always pays to know where your ribs are. So there's a rib there underneath. The next one would be about there. So it's soft there and it'll be hard there. So you'll end up like this if you're not careful. So now that's got what I would class as the top surface taken off, your paper doesn't block up it much. So that's pretty good anyhow. There's virtually nothing blocking the paper. But because that's so soft, I'm just going to go to some 120. Now I'm using the Merca mesh at the moment because I had some there. I've got some Galaxy there I'll try as well in a minute. So I think I have one dent about here somewhere. The rest of this face was pretty good. So I have used this piece before, so I'm just going to grab, I'll go put some more trace on it and I'll grab some Galaxy. So this is 120. Now a lot of people might say, I don't understand why you bog the whole thing up, because with it painted on the inside it didn't look too bad. I do it this way because I'm comfortable that this product is not going to move. Once it's set, it's set. So the fact that I've got these old rust areas, I had dents, I'm looking to actually get the whole lot nice and flat. So when I go to my next stage with my primers, I don't build up a lot of primer, which I know potentially can shrink more than what the filler will. So if you're wondering why I'm going to this effort, that's the reason why. So I might tidy up a bit, and then I'll grab the other, the machine, the Dollies, the square one, and just show you what that does. So that's 120, it doesn't feel too bad, but like I say, the difficulty is with a roof. It's hard on the ribs and it's soft in the middle. So I'm just going to trace it again. And I'm just going to show you this Dollies that I've been using a bit now. So traditionally I would do all this by hand, but I'm not getting any younger. And there's some good equipment around nowadays that you can use. I guess if you used it enough, you'd probably be able to do the whole job with it, but I still like to use that big file. So this is 120 again. So it's the square. So the trick with this is you've got to use it as if it's a block. It's just you don't have to rub as much. So straight away you can see a few lower areas where the trace is still there. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. You can see the scratches still in the black. And up through here. Now once I go up here where it's softer, because I don't need to put any pressure on it because it's oscillating, I'll just see what it looks like up here. That feels pretty darn good. So this line here is obviously between the two lights, and you can see the taper on it, and that's because when I'm finishing this off, I'm sanding this edge down so I can put my next one over it, and then I get a nice transition with no pinholes or nothing in it. So you can see there where one of those rusty areas were. I can see like a few of the deeper pits, and also an area here that have been, the metal have been rusted away. So I'm almost through to the epoxy. So that's getting very close to where I want it to be. I'll get the rest of it all like that, get this finished, and then I'll trace the whole thing in one piece and do it with 180. So this is 120, I'll go to 180, but I probably won't do that until I get this side done. Now just something, Louise, just have a look here. If you cut through like that, you can mix the epoxy up and dab it on with a brush or a bit of sponge. There was some damage in this area, so I dare say that's what's going on here. So I'll need to mix a bit up and put a bit in there before I keep going. That then normally I try and do before I go to lunch or something, because it's going to be half an hour before I can put some bog back over the top of the epoxy. We just got to stay in front of it, and now I need to get in and do this one. If you're looking to do something about the dust in your workshop, think about going to something like this Mercer system. Now I've been using it for a long time now. It's distributed by PPG in Australia. Great product. It's not the cheapest on the market, but it's a great product, and it will help you to not only keep your workshop clean, you'll get really good results as well. So I mixed up a little bit of epoxy, just mixed up 50 ml to do those areas up here. Now that's already dry, so it's only been like 10 minutes. And of course you get a brush in your hand, so you go, well, I'll go around and do some more bare metal. The gutters, I really wanted to get a bit of an idea how it was looking as well. So by putting that paint on there and you get all the one colour, it gives you a much better idea. You can see around here where I had sort of bare metal and filler and primers, now I've got that line. So this is all factory here, but we had some repairs. So where I've tapered that line in, I can now get a bit of a look. And it's just as simple as making obviously sure it's clean, dust free, and then you can just brush that on lightly like that. A little bit of something in there to cover up that bare metal, and then if you want to, you can go back with some more filler. Now we've quite often done a whole bit like that with the brush because it sands out really nicely. So now that I've done that, when that dries, I can see my lines, so I'm looking to get that nice flow. And then the same through here, I just put a bit more on there. Just get that to cover a bit more. And then once that dries, don't want to come out. Once that dries, I can get an idea what my lines are like. So it just makes it a little bit easier to do without getting the spray gun out and painting the whole thing. So I'll just cover up bare metal where I need to put more filler, and then I can get that last bit in. The front sanded up pretty good. It had an aerial, and you can see there, I need a little bit more in there, but you can see I've just about rubbed that all the way back down. Those areas there, it's just about starting to show the epoxy. So had a bit of movement in it, and there was a few rust patches on there, but mainly where we welded it up and had to panel beat it. So I'll just get a little bit more in there, and then yeah, get that centre bit done. Right, so I've looked back at the video footage we've got for this episode, and I realised that I've dropped the ball with the gun, not the gun, with the camera, because quite often I'm here on my own. So I talked about doing this last piece, so I've put the last piece in to finish that roof off. So obviously I've done that in 5 sections. That's about as much as I like to do in one piece. I've blocked that out with the long block, and it's now in 120. And before I finish this, I'll run over that with the square block with probably some 180, just to make sure I've got it right. But as you can see, I've got, you know, a bit of the epoxy coming through in different areas, and I'm really happy with the way it feels. A bit of a low there, you can see there, I had to put a bit extra in. And I've run around with that brush like I was just talking about and done all of those bare metal areas, so I can leave this for a couple of days. And you'll see in a minute where I'm doing the side. So I'm trying to get all of this done so I can spray that. Before I spray all of these areas now, I'll sand that back, probably with the machine, with a bit of 240, get it all nice and smooth. And then when I put this next lot of epoxy on, I normally put that on 2 good coats, and then I'll sand that by hand before I go to my primer. So yeah, bit of a filler, and you'll see now when we move on to doing the side windows. Filler. So I've been doing the roof, working my way around all the edges, and now I'm just filling this one up, and it's coming out really nice. So if you've watched previously, you've seen me hammering these up. So that's one skim, and it's starting to pick up, you know, some of the highs now, and I've only got one real low, or two little one here as well. And what I'm happy about is when I put my ruler on there, I've just got that slight curve, and I'm trying to match it up to what this is. So that's curved, so I didn't want this flat and having the rest of it curved. So I've put that one in, let it go off, put this one in, went back and sanded that one. Now I've sanded this one, and my idea there is I can now put the piece in the middle. I've rubbed these back down almost flush, and now I can put some in there, and then I'll put a little bit in these as well, a couple of lows, and then I should be able to block the whole lot out in one go. So we'll keep the camera rolling. I'll put some of this filler in here. So I'm just using start line, PPG start line filler, and I'm mixing it at 1.5% hardener to weight. And that enables me to have a little bit of time to get it in and flatten it out before it starts to go off. So we'll jump in and put some more in it. So one thing I like about using the scales is that this one here was 140 in weight. So this time I've mixed 130, which should give me enough. So as you're working through, it gives you an idea how much you need. Saves on a bit of wastage. And then because I'm mixing this at the same amount of hardener, when I go to sand all this, when it's finished, it all sands the same. So that's the whole idea. Okay. So the only thing you've got to do here is make sure that you get plenty of pressure when you're putting it in, the first time especially. And this epoxy's been prepped with just sanding with the burgundy Merlon or Scotch Brite. So that's the equivalent of about 360. So I'm just going to bulk this in and then flatten it out. And I showed it last time, I think, but the idea, if you can get it in, as it starts to go off, you can flatten it out and get rid of a lot of the air bubbles and rubbish out of it as you go. But you've got to get it in first. Come in a bit closer with that camera. You can see here as I'm pulling that down, you get the little holes in it. Well, once it starts to go off, they'll all disappear. Okay. Now I'll try and level her up a bit. As you can see, I've put a bit of this in over the years. Right. Now, got a little bit left, put a bit in these lows. Righto, I think I'm done. Now these edgy bits here where you've got a little bit hanging over, if you get a bit of rag with a bit of prep sol, that'll take that off. I've just got a bit of prep sol, put a bit on a rag. You can just go around and clean up these bits that you don't need any filler on, and it just saves a whole lot of effort when you're sort of getting finished. You don't have to be sanding it all off. So it's pretty cool in here today. I don't know what the temp is, but it's probably only 18 degrees or something. So I'm just using a heat gun. Just excites the hardener a bit. If I was filling somewhere else, you know, if I was doing multiple fills, I'd let this go off while I'm doing the next lot, but I'm pretty much nearly finished here now, so I'll just give it a bit of heat. Righto, so that's just got a little bit of stickiness, but not too much. Been about, you know, 10 minutes, 8 or 10 minutes. So I'm just using the trace coat, the powder. And I never used to use it on filler, but I have been for a long time now because it does make it much easier to see where you're going. And I'm just using a short block because I don't want to be dragging 80 grit over all these edges. And what I'm going to do is flatten it out, and then when I get done, when I go to 120, 180, I'll use a long one to go this way to make sure it's not too wavy. Just going to flatten up my edges, and then I'll come back across it and crisscross it. I have a little high there, I'll probably tap that one down in a minute. Now I could probably do this with the machine, but I'm way more used to doing it this way, so I'm going to do that, make sure I got it nice and flat, and then I'll probably pull the machine out when I go onto the 120. You can see there now the line in the join between the two lots of filler, and I'm starting to pick up here where you can see the epoxy coming through, and obviously because I've welded all this, got a couple of little highs, I'll tap them down, but in general it's pretty good. That one there, I'll keep working my way along, it'll probably come out as I go through, but I'm just watching here where my highs are. But I mean, for one skim, I'm more than happy with that. So I'll tidy that up and then we'll go to the next grade. Righto, so that was all small block with 80 grit. I've now got 120. I've retraced it and we'll see what we got. You can see there where the scratches are. That'll be just a tiny bit low, but I want to work through this line where I've done the 3 lots, so I'll just keep going a bit. A little bit low there. I reckon I'm a little bit low in here compared to this outer edge because I've got a lot of steel showing, but I'll check that with a ruler in a minute, and if need be I can put a little skim or something in there. Not a bad result. And you can see there I've just got a couple of mil in the middle, which is what I was after. So that one's a bit flat, might want a little bit more put back in there, but it'll, time it gets high build primers and stuff, you can make some of that up. But you can see there and through there, a little bit low there, and no crown, so it really wants a little bit more in there. So I'll probably go around and put some epoxy on all these lows and then put a bit of fine filler in it, and that'll give me what I need. Righto, so I mixed up some epoxy, put that on around the edges with the brush, and I did that before I had some lunch, so it's all dry now, and I'm going to put some more filler. Sort of double check where I'm going. This area through here is a bit low, and the same along the top here, so I'm just going to put a bit more in there and then block that out. So if you're using that DP616 with the brush, just use 50% of the thinner they recommend, and I just use a cheap brush from Bunnings, and you can put your filler over the top of that without rubbing it after 20 minutes. So I've had an hour for lunch, so I'm good to go. Righto, so I've filled those couple of low areas that I was worried about, and I've sanded that with 120, and I'm now got the Deros here with a 240 on it. So I've traced it, I'm just going to run this over, make sure everything's good, and then I'm pretty much ready to put it into epoxy. feels so much better in the 240. I can feel a few little bits and pieces, but not enough to worry about because it's got to go into high build primer, and I may even do the roof and these side panels in the poly. Just depends on how I feel once I've got it sealed up. So I'll keep going. So I've just got the car up on its side today because Steve had a bit of a gap with what he's doing, so he's just doing a bit of paint stripping up the front. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to do this join. Now, on one of the previous programs, some time back I would think, I welded this up. So normally the factory, this panel turns under, the sill goes in and it's spot welded, and they put a sealer in it, and they always tend to crack and rust. Now I've done this a few times on some of the coupes I've done, so I've fully welded that with a MIG, but then I've ground it back out, and what I'm about to do now is I'm going to put filler in there, and I'm going to fill it all up, but then I'm going to mark it back through and cut it back into the filler and make a nice radiused edge like this to create what looks like the original join, but it won't have any sealer in it. So I'm just going to do that. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to throw it on because something a little bit different, and we'll make sure we work through the process and show you how we do it. Right, so that took me a couple of goes because when you weld things like this up, you obviously get a little bit of movement. So I ended up putting a second run of filler in here, but you can see here, it's starting to see through now, and we're obviously through in these points. I actually tapped this one down a little bit, and up the top here I've been rubbing that. So what I've been using is this little tool, which I find really good for these model cars. So this is like a Merca block, and it's interchangeable. So you can take the flat one off, put the curved one on, and then that fits really nicely into there. So I can sand along this way, up and down, and you can see we've just got a couple of little lows, and along this edge I would expect it to have a little bit of movement. So I've got that to that point. I've run myself a line through here now with a pencil with a straight edge, and what I'm going to do now is tape to the top edge and then block this bottom edge. So at the moment I'm a bit further down than I am here, so I want to get a nice even edge, and then I'll do the same on the other side, and then I'll cut my line back in. So when I say tape it, just a bit of masking tape. I like to put a line on because if you just use the tape bends very easily when you're pulling it out. So if we do that, and I'll just put the vacuum on, and then I'm going to block that line, and that gives me something to work to. I'm just using a bit of 120. if you're thinking to yourself, he hasn't got gloves on, you're right. And the reason I haven't got gloves on, I've got very dry skin. And I'm just used to not wearing them for doing this sort of fiddly work. So that's my line. So now I want to create this radius on the bottom edge, and then the top one's a little bit sharper, but we need to create that. So what I'm going to do with that is I'll probably use something like this. So this is a block, like a spline. So this is Big Kids blocks, and I've just got some 180 on it. So what I would do then is run along there, probably by hand, because that's a bit worn out, that 180, but I'll go along there now. The option is to maybe tape this on there to give me that nice edge to work to. I might even do that yet, so that when I sit that in there, that'll do that. So I'll get myself organised and I'll start cutting that in. Righto, so I'll put a bit of new 180 on that block, and I'm just going to, it doesn't take much to create a line. Now if you're thinking to yourself, this seems like a lot of messing about for not much difference, but it really is about longevity, because I know quite well that if I had have just left this and put some sealer in it, at some point down the track that sealer would let go, and then we'd get a little bit of rust creeping in, or just a crack in the paint. And I'm going to spend so much time painting this thing, I don't really want to have to be repairing it later because something's let go. So if we take that off, you can see there now, that's starting to create that factory line. So I'm going to tape it the opposite way now and put this bigger radius on the bottom, but that's looking pretty good. Righto, let's see if we can get the bottom to go as nice as the top. It doesn't take much, especially with 180. To cut that in. So because this has got a slight curve in it, I think it's not quite going down as much there. Whoa, that cut quick there. What I might do now is go to a softer bit of paper. I might use a bit of 240 soft, the foam back. I'm just trying to keep this is quite a heavy radius here, and I feel like it's a bit thin on through there. Whether that's just the pencil line throwing me off. But in a minute I'll mix up a bit of epoxy and I'll paint it with a brush with the epoxy, and that'll show me very clearly what it's going to look like. Righto, I'll have a bit of a mess with that and then I'll show you the result. Righto, so this will tell me how we went. So I've just messed it around a little bit with that soft 240, and this is just some DP616 mixed up with half the amount of thinner that they recommend for spraying, and we can just brush that on. And the data sheet tells you can brush it or roll it. there we go, one nice factory looking line. A little bit sharp there still, but in the main I'm very happy with that. That's a good result.